This video contains content discussing violence, death, and murder. Viewer discretion advised.
The disappearance of Frederick, Valentich, 1978, is a mysterious and perplexing aviation incident that occurred over the Bass Strait in Australia. On October 21st, 1978, Frederick Valentich, a 20-year-old pilot, took off from Moorabbin Airport in a Cessna 182L aircraft for a training flight. During the flight, Valentich reported to air traffic control that he was being accompanied by an unidentified flying object, a UFO. Valentich described the UFO as a long metallic object with green light and expressed concerns about its intentions. He reported that the object was hovering and orbiting around his aircraft. Astonishingly, moments later, Valentich's radio transmissions became distorted and he vanished without a trace. Despite an extensive search effort, no wreckage or remains were ever found. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich has sparked numerous theories and speculations, ranging from a deliberate disappearance to encounters with extraterrestrial beings. Skeptics argue that Valentich may have experienced spatial disorientation or committed self-unaliving, while others believe his encounter with a UFO may have led to an abduction or possibly interference with him and or his aircraft. The case remains one of the most enigmatic and debated mysteries in aviation histories, with no conclusive evidence to provide a clear explanation for Valentich's disappearance. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich, 1978, is a mysterious case. While there are various theories and speculations, it's important to note that there is no official suspects in a criminal sense. The primary focus has been on different hypotheses attempted to explain his disappearance. Here are just a brief presentation of the key theories or factors that have been considered in Frederick Valentich's disappearance. A UFO encounter. Valentich himself reported seeing an unidentified flying object, commonly known as a UFO, during the flight. Some theories suggest that this UFO might have played a role in his disappearance, including the possibility of abduction and extraterrestrial beings being involved. Hoax or unaliving of oneself. Skeptics have proposed that Valentich's UFO encounter might have been a hoax or a cover for intentional disappearance, possibly through self-unaliving or other means. Spatial disorientation. It's suggested that Valentich may have experienced spatial disorientation during the flight, leading to confusion and his surroundings and ultimately causing the disappearance. Human error or accident. Some theories propose that the disappearance could have been attributed to the pilot error or technical malfunctions, or even an accidental crash into the ocean. Military involvement. There have been speculations about the involvement of military aircrafts or activities in the area. Some theories suggest that Valentich might have accidentally encountered military operations that have led to his disappearance. Weather conditions. Adverse weather conditions or turbulence might have played a role in the disappearance. However, this theory is often challenged due to the fact that there is a lack of distress calls typically associated with weather related incidences. It's important to note that there is no theory that emphasizes any particular conclusion, and that the case remains one of the great unsolved mysteries in aviation history. The lack of physical evidence, such as wreckage or Valentich's remains, has contributed to the endured mystery surrounding his disappearance. The official investigation has not yielded a definitive explanation, leaving room for continued speculation and debate into the case. The investigation into the disappearance of Frederick Valentich in 1978 was primarily conducted by Australian aviation authorities, with the Australian Department of Transport leading the efforts into the investigation. The investigation focused on gathering information from various sources, including radar data, radio communication, and witness statements. However, it is important to note that the case remains unsolved to this day, and no definitive conclusion has been reached. As of the upload of the video, no specific names of individuals involved in the investigation in this case have been widely available in public records or reports. Investigations in the aviation world incidents typically involve teams of experts from relevant authorities rather than individual investigators. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau, ATSB, is one of the organizations that was involved in the investigations, but the specific personnel involved is unfortunately not publicly disclosed. As of the upload of this video, I would encourage you to check official reports, news sources, or the Australian authorities for the latest details on the investigation into the disappearance of Frederick Valentich. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich in 1978 is marked by a lack of conclusive evidence, and the mystery surrounding the case persists due to the absence of wreckage, remains, or other concrete proof. However, several pieces of evidence and information have been considered in the investigation in this case. Please note that the available evidence is limited and that unfortunately no definitive conclusions have been drawn to this date. Here's just a brief summary of the pieces of evidence found in this case. Radio communications. The primary source of information comes from the radio communications between Valentich and air traffic control. Valentich reported an unidentified flying object, commonly known as a UFO, and is described his observations before the communications was lost to this day. Eyewitness accounts. There were limited eyewitness accounts from individuals on the ground who reported seeing unusual lights or objects in the sky around the time of Valentich's disappearance. Weather conditions. Weather reports and conditions at the time of the incidents were examined to determine if adverse weather might have played a role in the disappearance. However, the weather conditions were reported as generally clear and safe. Search and rescue efforts. Extensive search and rescue efforts were conducted over the Bass Strait to locate Valentich and his aircraft. However, no wreckage or remains were ever found despite a thorough investigation. Aircraft maintenance records. The maintenance records of Valentich Cessna 182L were examined to assess whether any mechanical failures or issues with the aircraft could have contributed to the disappearance. Unfortunately, no conclusive evidence was ever found. Valentich's background. Investigators looked into Valentich's personal and professional background to explore factors such as mental state, training, and any potential motivations for intentional disappearance. Unfortunately, nothing conclusive was ever found. Radar data. The radar data was analyzed to track Valentich's flight path and to identify any anomalies or deviations. However, radar coverage was limited in the area and no definitive conclusions were ever drawn. Official reports. The Australian Department of Transport and other relevant authorities compiled official reports based on the available evidence and information gathered during the investigation. Unfortunately, nothing conclusive was ever found. Despite these elements, the lack of physical evidence has made it challenging to establish a conclusive explanation for Valentich's disappearance. The case remains one of the more enduring mysteries in aviation history in Australia, with theories ranging from encounters with UFO and to the more conventional explanation such as pilot error or intentional disappearance. The only known victim in the disappearance of Frederick Valentich in 1978 was Valentich himself. Frederick Valentich was a 20-year-old Australian pilot who went missing on the 21st of August 1978 during a solo training flight over the Bass Strait in a Cessna 182L aircraft. Born on June 9, 1978, he disappeared on October 21st, 1978 at the age of 20. Frederick Valentich was born in Melbourne, Australia. He developed an early interest in aviation and obtained his private pilot license. On the day of his disappearance, Valentich took off from Moorabbin Airport in Melbourne for a night training flight. During the flight, he reported a series of unusual observations, including an unidentified flying object, or a UFO, commonly known, that he claimed was following him. His last radio transmission was filled with apparent distress, and soon after, both Valentich and his aircraft disappeared without a trace. Despite extensive searches and efforts to locate him, no wreckage or remains of Frederick Valentich or his aircraft were ever found. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance have fueled various theories and speculations, ranging from encounters with UFOs to intentional disappearance or even accidents. The case remains unsolved to this day, and the mystery of Frederick Valentich's disappearance continues to captivate those interested in unexplained aviation incidences.